Hello and welcome back to the Advancing Health Innovation Show. I am your host, Michael Stamatinos, and it's great to see you. It's great to have you here. If you're new to us, we're just having some very exciting conversations with some incredible leaders that are painstakingly shaping the future of healthcare. We're really crazy and passionate about a couple different things. We're passionate about healthcare access, we're passionate about leadership and innovation. And if it's your first time tuning in, let me just take a quick step back and tell you what we are trying to do here. So, we're focused on bringing real stories of innovation and leadership to life, not just stories that are just only the highlight reels. We're trying to bring the real stories, things that are happening within the space and the wins, the lessons, and we're giving these folks the opportunity to share their story with our community, with our platform, and ultimately with the world. We've got an amazing action-packed year. If you haven't had the opportunity to check out any of the historical interviews, just make sure wherever you are, if you're watching this or if you're listening to this, hit the subscribe button now so that any of the new episodes come directly to you. So our field is consistently moving. It's fast paced. It's crucial to have leaders that are coming on that can envision the future differently, embrace innovation, want to address many of these pressing challenges. And there's no shortage of challenges, which means that there's a lot of opportunities to make things better. So our next guest on the show is a visionary leader who's working diligently around autism advocacy. And this is actually a topic that's very near and dear to me, having an older kiddo that's on the spectrum. So I'm thinking about this a lot. So Jennifer Brooks Kaluza is the founder and executive director of Come As You Are, called CAYA. At CAYA, Jen has channeled her profound dedication to societal improvement and to creating sort of brighter futures for adults with autism, a group that's often overlooked in discussions around independence and employment. So she knows that these adults often don't get enough help, and she's looking to do something about it. So through her work, these adults with autism are finding new ways to be successful and live their lives in a much better way. So Jen's background also includes strategic leadership roles at Elevance Health, along with serving on the board of the Autism Society of America. She brings a wealth of knowledge and personal passion to the discussion today. So she's going to share some of her personal motivations around founding of CAYA, sort of sharing some of the best practices that she's deploying and how she thinks healthcare can do more for people who often get left out. So, Jen, welcome to the show. It's good to see you. How are you?
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate you having me here today.
Yeah. So, look, your journey from being an insurance executive to founding Kaya, it's kind of both unique and inspiring. But could you maybe share the moment or maybe even the experience that sparked this sort of transition?
Sure. So I think it's definitely was a personal uh, journey for myself, but also for my son. So my son Charlie, he's my inspiration for Kaya. He's 13. He is autistic as well as has a lot of other differences. And as he's been growing up, we've been I mean, even himself have really struggled with what does the future look like. So we went through this horrible journey where for every single day he was crying, "Mom, I don't want to grow up. Mom, I'm afraid to go to college. Mom, I don't want to get my license. Mom, can I live with you forever?" And while a part of that is sweet when they're younger, you want your kids to love you
Mhm.
and need you. It really opened up my eyes of like this is actually a very possible reality for him. Looking at the data of adults with autism, the level of underemployment and unemployment is estimated to be around 80%. Similar numbers of adults with autism living with a caregiver. And as a caregiver and knowing I can't live forever, how is my son and how is this population going to live not just live, but live meaningfully in a way that, you know, makes them feel happy about their lives. So in my community, I started talking to a lot of parents, and parents are, I know so many who are creating laundromats or opening food trucks or creating these businesses because they don't believe that they're going to find their child is going to find a place in the workplace. So they're creating these jobs for them. And again, while that is wonderful that parents have that ability, that's not how it should be. So I started thinking through, what is the chain of events that gets someone to adulthood, right? And I kind of compare it to what we saw in the foster care system um, before, is that, a lot of times foster kids, they turn 18, there's no other supports. A lot of states
Right.
have changed that, but we still are way far behind that with the autism population. And someone like my son Charlie, he falls into this population I call that are slipping through the cracks, where he's not disabled enough to qualify for Medicaid services or be on a waiver to get services past 18, but he's not neurotypical enough and he struggles, with the mainstream. So this is the population that I'm incredibly passionate about, and that are slipping through the cracks, that are incredibly capable. They need some help, just like all of us need some help. And I kind of came to the realization, if not me, then who? And if you don't start now, then when? So I left my career at Elevance Health, where I had the incredible privilege of leading Medicare and Medicaid populations, to start CAYA and see what I can do.
Hmm. Well, I feel like just sort of given prior to this, you mentioned that your husband, was in the military. So thank you for his services. But you think about your tour of duty, as people do these tours of duty. How do you think that, particularly your tour of duty at Elevance Health, how did those experiences and the understanding of Medicare and Medicaid sort of shape your vision and approach for Kaya?
Yeah, so when I was the COO of the Virginia Health Plan for Medicaid for about 5 years, and really had the opportunity to kind of build that health plan from the ground up. And in that opportunity, I did a lot of care coordination and clinical operations. So I was in the car, doing ride-alongs with care coordinators, being in the community. I'm a true believer that I can only build something if I understand it. And you have to understand the people that you serve. So that clinical insights of, what does it take for a care coordinator to manage a population and to truly help them improve life, improve outcomes, really just opened my eyes of like how what can I do to help with that? And what are these experiences that this population is going through from a behavioral health side, or if they're in foster care, CHIP,
Mm,
TANF, like what are their experiences and what are their challenges? And there's nothing beats lived experiences. So being in the Medicaid side and seeing that, as well as living it myself with my son, um, just really, I think, put me in a position to have a combination of both like clinical academic understanding, but also the lived experiences of what are these people really experiencing and what are the programs and supports that would be meaningful. Not having, if you build it and it doesn't really help, or you build it with, in a box, then you're not going to really get the outcomes that you need. So just being such a big believer of being in the community and building programs that reflect lived experiences is just incredibly important.
mm. Yeah, then you actually feel and see the pain points up close and personal. To that, what were some of the initial challenges when you were sort of tailoring your programs to meet this sort of diverse range of needs?
Mm-hmm. Uh, well, one thing that I learned, um, both I think from professional and just some advice I got, is like you can't do too much out of the gate, right? And I think that transcends a lot
I know.
professionally. So I've kept Kaya very narrow in term, at least for right now, being a year in, of the scope. So while I think there's opportunity to help, autism is a spectrum. You meet one person with autism, you meet one person with
Yeah.
autism. And that makes it really challenging too, of when it's such a big spectrum of how it presents, how do you make a meaningful program for a segment? So I've really focused on the low support needs population, unapologetically as well. There's a lot of state programs that focuses on the high support needs, and to say no, that they don't fit into the Kaya's framework or they're not a good fit for the program is really hard because I want to help so many people,
Right.
but I have to stay very true to this is the population that we're working with, is the low supports under the neurodivergent umbrella, whether it's autism, ADHD, dyslexia. I'm dyslexic myself, and I've learned so much of myself as building this program of, this is the population that we're working with. And I've hated to say no to a lot of people and a lot of things, but I didn't want to bite off more than I could chew and fail fast. I'd rather, focus on the very specific population in the programs.
I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was mentioning something to me about some of these nonprofit hospitals he works with that are basically run by the nuns. And long story short, what he was mentioning is like they're okay with saying no to someone today as long as they know that the mission will progress so they can say yes to someone later on down the line. So it just seems as though that you've sort of taken that similar approach, and it is difficult, especially if if your natural inclination is to help people, uh, you usually want to say yes. You don't
Yeah,
usually want to say no. So that's uh,
exactly.
that's interesting. It's very
And that's
interesting.
why I started Kaya, right, is to help. And I've said before that I have always wanted to help people, and like I could never be a nurse or a doctor. That's an incredible skill set that I don't have. But what are like the things that I'm really good at? And that's like operations, advocating, fighting the good fight for something that I believe in, and to kind of harness those powers of that I have and to target it on a specific focus, which for me is Kaya. It's my way to help make the
You
world
know,
a
there's
better
something
place.
there's something to be said about understanding and knowing what your superpower is. And with the folks that are coming through, is there an aspect of that that allows you to sort of figure out what is the superpower of this kiddo, or for example, Charlie? What is Charlie's superpower? We think about that as a parent. We think about that for our oldest. What's his superpower? Highly empathic, highly. I mean, this kid, he doesn't want to hurt a fly, so
Hmm.
he has this thing around animals. For whatever reason, animals flock to him. So it's like, all right, if that's his superpower, how do we equip him with the tools to be able to nurture that superpower? Could you maybe just sort of comment around that sort of thought process? Is that something that you incorporate, or how do you look to sort of draw out people's superpowers?
Yeah, I think powers is a tricky word for me because they a lot of this population does need supports, and we don't want to try
Of
almost
course, of
like
course, of
over
course.
glorify some of their challenges, but you're absolutely right. They A lot of people do have something that they're really great at. And in one of the programs that we run is called the Ready program, and that's exactly what it does. It gets young adults and adults ready for what's next, in the workplace, independence. And the approach that we take is that independence looks different for everyone. And that really starts at what are your skills and what are your interests. So we do, the first couple weeks is helping people kind of reset what they think their interests are and what their skills are. And we go through this very beautiful and powerful exercise where they think independently in a lot of ways without like a caregiver or um, someone supporting them to think about what do they really like. And then we kind of map that with, jobs are in different categories. Level one is, you need little skill, to level five is you need an advanced degree. So you match kind of your interests, talents with what jobs are in those categories. And the smiles lit up the room. I was like, oh, I never thought like demolition, or I could do that. That's so cool. Or being a teacher's aide. I had this one woman in tears, and she was like, I am so happy when I help people, but I was struggling if teaching was right with me because I struggle with learning, and this just validates me. And that's what a lot of it is just validating and finding confidence in the art of possible. So to the superpower of like, what does that really translate to from like skills and interests, and how can we help you kind of navigate your own journey of, well, I could be a teacher's aide, or I could be a vet tech, or I want to be an engineer. So now, because I like this, I know I now have to apply to school to go to the next step. So we keep the classes really small so people do have that one-on-one support, and just to let them know it's okay what they're going through, and that this experience and this self-discovery is what we're trying to help them have at CAYA, and just believe in themselves.
What's the footprint that you have? Is it sort of regional? Is it national? What's current state?
Current state is Hampton Roads, Virginia. So we're, but
Grassroots,
big,
you gotta love it.
yeah, but big dreams of how Kaya can scale and be a digital platform. So you think about like what is next for Kaya, and how do we get it outside of, our area of the world. I want to put it on an app or digital experience where our programs are like courses that people can join. There really isn't a safe like communication platform for this community too. So envision like a Reddit like forum that's safe for people to share. My son stims by flapping his arms, for example, and I imagine him like engaging and saying, "I'm nervous for my interview. What if I flap my arms?" And like having a community where they can like share tips and tricks of what did they do in that scenario. Um, and also some like bite like information, like these 2-minute videos where things like, what do you do when you think your coworker is attractive? Or how do you request time off from work and not feel guilty about it? There's all
Mm.
these little, one, at the foundation is building community. Two, questions or thoughts that may be normal or expected to you and I, like these are real burning, anxiety ridden like questions that this
Yeah.
community needs some help with.
And there's something to be said just even in the moment when someone asks that question, 'cause there's a level of, again, going back to Mike here, like there's just a level of innocence in some of the questions that he asks. And I just sometimes I chuckle to myself, but to him it's really serious.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, to have that connectivity, and we talk about this a lot because his there's some social awkwardness. Maybe there's some cues that he misses and things of that
Hmm.
nature. So you think about that as a parent, you're like, man, I want my kid to be able to be connected to other kiddos, um, neurotypical and typical, right? You just
Yeah.
want them to have friends. This aspect of community is really it's it's really hitting me. What else do you think, in addition to community, th- that this grouping of folks needs um, to to make it to thrive?
Yeah. A lot of times they need a chance. I'll say one of the biggest frustrating points of the work I've been doing with Kaya is when I'm talking to employers or I'm talking to different groups, and I say that we work, with the autism community. I see a change in people's facial expression almost immediately. And that's because of their lack of understanding or bias again around autism and the stigma. So unfortunately, a lot of people that I've engaged with, their thoughts of autism is a very like a non-speaking behavioral, very they have a very limited view of what autism looks like. And having to walk them through, it is a spectrum, right? And um, autism looks different in everyone. And like, would you think someone who needs extra time, or do you think someone who needs support with priorities? Do you think of autism when you think of that? They're like, no, that's normal. Like, well, that's a lot of the supports that this population actually needs. So kind of
Mm,
demystifying autism a lot to these employers is a big part of what I'm doing. And, it's the battle a lot of people in the community are battling is like different, not less. And, you know, three
different, not
people,
less. Oh, that's
yeah.
so good.
And really kind of taking down the walls and challenging people. And I say this in meetings when I meet with a lot of people is I'm going to ask you to challenge what you think of what you think autism looks like, or what do you think? someone is capable of with autism. And let me walk you through some examples of what autism looks like with the people that we work with at CAYA. And um, it's a real eye opener for them. And also they're like, oh yeah, like this person could work here. And I'm like, great. So let's start working on that. Um, and providing, we work with the people that we work with, they go through a process too of acknowledging what accommodations do they need in the workplace. And there's two different types of accommodations that they can do themselves, right? So if they need a break every 2 hours 15 minutes, they can put that in their calendar. They don't need to ask a manager for accommodations, in this instance. But if they need the flexibility to work at home on some days, or um they need like writing of the priorities and like a weekly update or something from the boss, those are accommodations they need to ask for. So we help them differentiate between those two, and also share with employers like these are some accommodations that are free to you or a little cost to you, but they will make all the difference to your neurodivergent employee.
Hmm. So take me through, like, who's your customer? We know who you support and who you help, but who's like the funder of this? And I just say this because the world of nonprofits, especially whether it's healthcare, special ed, some of these, they can be notoriously tough. Who funds these, and maybe have there been any things that you want to sort of share about that aspect of the business?
So I have been self-funding the program myself. Um, you know, Funding is the hardest part. I've been getting in the community, partnering with other nonprofits to get our name out there. They're both personal and professional. I've had some like lovely donors who have like supported the mission. Everyone I talk to about CAYA has the same response that I'm very grateful for of like, this is amazing. This is so needed. I'm like, okay, great. Well, if you would like to help donate, that's amazing too. Um, but the other piece that we're getting funding from is we're holding a neuro-inclusive job fair and networking event. So this is very rare. I haven't come across, I'm sure, I don't want to say we're the first, ever, but I'll say
Right.
in our area of the world, this is not something that's happening. So we're holding a community networking and job fair event in April, bringing local employers together with various sponsorship levels to support it, as well as bringing the neurodivergent community in the area together. And it's so powerful in terms of, this community. Now we have, Anthem's a sponsor, and we have a woodworking and a construction company, Virginia Beach Police Department's coming. And they're now creating a bridge of opportunity, the art of what's possible with meeting with this community. So people who have always been interested in criminal justice, but thought for whatever reason, working at like Kroger, or they just could never work at the police department. The police
Mm.
department showing up is now saying, we support you, we see you, and we're here to answer questions about what working at the police department looks like. And maybe there is an opportunity for you to work here.
Interesting. What's been most surprising on this journey for you so far up until this particular point?
Um, I mean, this is probably my own thing, but no one's saying, what the heck are you doing? Or no one's saying, this isn't helpful or this is a bad idea. I think, there's so much fear stepping out of, I was at Elevance for over a decade and had a job that I loved, but my soul was literally calling me to do something differently, which is why I started CAYA. But I have a lot of fear and the uncertainty, and I literally just take a step every day, but I'm also waiting for someone to say, like, you're not qualified to do this. Like, this isn't, why are you doing this? So that's my own insecurity and fear, but that's one thing I've been kind of waiting for to happen.
Yeah, there's like this inner voice sometimes that tells you that, and then you just tell that voice to shut up. And then
Yeah,
you just then you
not
continue to
today,
take a step.
Satan.
Yeah, not today. Not today. Or you have others that are in your life that know you and that know your abilities. Clearly, you are qualified to do this. You have many things that you've accomplished in your professional career, and this is that was leading up to this particular step. It doesn't necessarily make it any easier, right? When you're in sort of the wilderness, you kind of need to have tools to help get through some of the darker days, and you get through them. That only happens when you have good people around you. There's really
Yeah.
no other way other than that. Because if you try to do this completely by yourself, it's just even the best, even the most strong-willed, the strong-minded will will struggle eventually. You mentioned something about technology, and I just want to maybe kind of riff on that thread a little bit. How do you see this tech can kind of really scale what you're trying to do from an impact standpoint?
Yeah, I think this community is known to be very, I'll say, tech forward and tech friendly. So it's really creating a platform that is engaging and that they want to use it, right? I think that's some of the challenges is, creating it, but in order for it to be meaningful, and even the Reddit example that I use, it's only going to be a supportive community if the community is participating.
Right.
So I think the digital platform is the opportunity to get CAYA outside of just our corner of Virginia. Um, but the big, and I know I keep saying this word, but the app has to create the community that brings people together. So they don't feel that they're alone, that they don't have a resource to help them with this, gets them challenged, whether it's a gamification module or, mental health is an incredibly important facet for this population. People, autistic adults experience suicide 8 times more than the normal population. So, how do you bring this together where the community is engaged, people feel valued, they feel safe? And then all of these programs that we're building now can be accessible to anyone, anywhere. And being able to measure those outcomes will be important as well.
When you were mentioning about this sort of this segment of the population, how big of a pool are we talking about? Like the Charlies of the world. Like how many of them are out there that we can guess?
Yeah, so it's estimated under the neurodivergent umbrella that 1 in 4 adults are neurodivergent. Um, for autism, I haven't seen any data of, autism is level one, two, three, and this population is primarily the level one that we work with. I haven't seen data that breaks out the different levels, but
Hmm.
overall, the US population is for adults is 2%, which comes out to be a little over 5 million adults that are autistic.
Hmm. It's really fascinating. Switching gears quickly, just because it's still in my mind, as you mentioned, around shifting from your professional career, as you were mentioning that your soul was sort of itching for you to do this. What do you say to the professional that is, I'll just say they like what they're doing, they're happy with it, but they know that there's something more out there. What do you say to them? I'm just wondering if there were maybe influences or mentors that urged you to take this step out. Like, what would you say to them if they're tuning in?
Yeah, trust that gut feeling. And if you can, I say you only have one shot at this rodeo. Right. And when you look back, did you live a life that fulfilled you, soul, mind, body? Did you get everything that you wanted out of it? Were your priorities truly a way that you live to? So when I think about it, like I was missing a ton of things with my kids because I was traveling or I was working all the hours, and I could never go to a lacrosse practice and just sit without my work computer because there was always something that had to be done. I mean, that's not living. Like I was watching life pass me by, and I made the conscious decision that I did not want this to be my life, and this is how I defined what life was for me. So I was very intentional of hitting the timeout button and saying, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I know there's more to life. And I didn't realize at the time the courage that that took. And that was another real surprise is when I shared I was leaving, a lot of people that I knew professionally were like, I admire your courage, or that takes that's so incredible that you could do this. I was like, I just felt like there was no other way to live, and I'm choosing to live differently.
Mm. Who've been some of the mentors that have influenced you? I mean, you want to give them a shout out?
Oh man, Elena McFadden, she was the president of Medicare, and I was her chief of staff, and she also has a an autistic son, and she just believed in me and took a chance on me from taking me over from Medicaid over to Medicare, and she's just always been a wonderful sounding board. So I'm very grateful for her. And then Jenny Reynolds, my Medicaid plan president, just gave me the ability to. She just trusted me, and she said, "What you know what needs to get done." And I'm just going to let you do it. And that gave me a lot of freedom and creativity to do it. So, two amazing women in my life that has definitely made me feel that I have a seat at the table and I can do anything.
That's awesome. You know, the work that you're doing, it's very grassroots, and yet I keep thinking about there's this sort of the the advocacy component. How do you sort of envision your role, and Kaya's in shaping the policies or, the public perception about autism in adults?
It's I feel like the conversation is really just starting to get momentum. There has been so much focus, and rightfully so, in the early identification, early treatment in autism, which is why we've seen the rates really change to
Yeah.
what they are today. But the story that I'm finding myself having and telling people is 1 in 36 children are now going to be 1 in 36 adults. And what do we have from a social system to support these adults to be successful? I don't think the conversations are happening. I think, again, the autism conversation is a lot around those with high needs, and Medicaid services and what does that look like for them and their sustainability. I think this, the level one, the low support functioning, there's not the right conversation. And a lot of these adults are we've seen a huge phenomenon in like late diagnosis. So as parents, this is actually a true story for me and my family is as a child's getting diagnosed, the parents are like, well, I do that. I really like that. I do that too. And my son's father was actually diagnosed autistic at 43, after kind of going through this. So I think it's the education, the awareness, and also, screaming at the top of my lungs that, autism looks so different and we can't just support one version of autism and we need to bring visibility and support to, the whole spectrum.
Hmm. Well, I mean, if you could change one thing about the public's perception of autism, what would it be?
It would be the limited view and the very biased belief of what autism looks like, of what they're truly capable of. And the limits for the autism population often exist in someone else's mind and not the actual capability of the person that's autistic.
Hmm. So, what are some of the other alternative funding sources? I mean, are you talking philanthropic groups and anything that the government can support? What have you thought? How have you strategized, going down that road?
Yeah, right now we're really focusing on foundations and local grants. A lot of the big government grants, you need 3 years of tax returns, and with us being so new, that's not our wheelhouse. So we're really focused on these grants that are less than $10,000. Get them to add up for us so we can keep sustainable program, meeting, with some families who are connected to the autism community and, getting some donations that way. But we're really focusing on more like local, regional type of grants that are smaller dollars.
Okay. What's the best way for people to, follow Kaya, the work that you are doing? You maybe just sort of run off a commercial before we wrap.
Yeah, absolutely. We are on all the things. So LinkedIn, come as you are. uh, Facebook, come as you are as well, Instagram, Kaya Project. We have a newsletter. Our website is kayaproject.org. You can email me, Jenny at kayaproject.org. We're always posting different things, different tips and tricks, and more about our program. We're continuing to develop programs. Our next program is going to be Kaya Bridge, which is focusing on the 17 to 21 population, talking about, college application, driver license, things like that. And then our other program is Kaya Love, which is about personal relationships and, all of that fun stuff that comes with it.
Jenny, I just got to applaud you for making this happen, right? You're like, hey, if someone else is not doing it, then I'm obviously called to do it. And you have been called to do this. This isn't a job for you. This is a mission. And clearly you're on one. How can this community, the Advancing Healthcare Innovation Consortium community, those that want to innovate within our space, because innovators are usually the best executors and they take action. What's the one request that you have from us, from our community? How can we best support you?
Yeah, I mean, I would ask you to think about in your own roles, how are you identifying or how are you working or how are you doing things differently with this population? Do you have neuro-inclusive practices? Are you asking people, what's the best way to communicate with them, in every day? And just assume positive intent and really think about what your own thoughts are about autism and see if have an honesty check. Is that from bias or what is the foundation of truth behind that? And give people a chance.
Yeah, yeah, this has been awesome to chat with you and just to learn more about, what you're focused on. This certainly has a major, major impact on me, and you've left a huge mark. And for those, if you've listened to this conversation for whatever reason, if you found it compelling, would you mind sharing it on social media? I think we're grateful. Any kind of little bit helps. When you want to make a difference, you want to move things forward. It's about taking action. So Jenny, you're welcome to come back, and we'd love to hear the journey, how
Anytime.
things are going on. But yeah, look forward to our next conversation. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.